Hello and welcome to the Dungeon Masters Guild House. I exaggerated my arms a lot there. It just happened naturally. Yes, this is a weekly podcast where I, your host, Matthew Whitby, sit down with amazing people across the tabletop RPG space and the DMs Guild and chat about, their creative process and their wonderful products. This week, I'm joined by someone I've had the privilege to collaborate with on a few projects, Adam Hancock. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
No, okay, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Got a good night's rest for once, so yeah.
No, I think I'm. Yeah, you know what? I think I had a good night's sleep as well, which is rare. I'm riding that buzz as well.
We'll study.
So going into it then, so the people listening, what sort of products are you kind of known for on the DMs Guild, or what's kind of your forte?
I was looking at my portfolio of products, and I have to say, if you can't find a thread between them, I don't blame you, because I'm sort of everywhere. My interests vary, but my most profitable and best-selling products was Balduran's Guide to Kingdom Building, so probably that. I also led a huge, I say huge, not in terms of page length, but in terms of number of collaborators, a huge project called Animal Sidekicks, where I sort of took 40, I think it was like all told 43, most of them brand new to the Dungeon Masters Guild people, and brought them onto this one project, and we made this this thing that I just wanted to make it for my kids, and that was great, and that's an Electrum bestseller now. I've also done some NPC collections. Slinker, Sailor, Soldier, Spy was the first one, and then there's a follow-up, Brawler, Bandit, Brigand, Bard.
You gotta stick with the alliteration of those sort of titles.
Yeah, we'll keep going.
Yeah.
There's plenty of letters left in the alphabet. And then you might have heard of this one. I collaborated on Big Boss Epic Goblins with Matthew Whitby. So.
We did that one. I was going to say, yeah, was it? Looking back, I actually think, was it going back to like when I kind of started on the even like some of my earlier products with like, was it Baldur's Gate items and encounters was another one that you edited for me. So honestly, I think like our history has like it goes back like for as long as at least that I've been in the game. You've been kind of around at the fringes, sort of editing my projects, or
yeah. So,
well, no, honestly, no, I see what you mean about there being no sort of consistent. You kind of are all over the place, and in the nicest ways. Sorry. But no, I don't know what to start. I actually find this like the thing that immediately jumps out is I am honestly amazed at trying to navigate a 43-person collaboration with so many of them being sort of first-time authors.
Yeah.
What made you kind of want to say, okay, well, I want to start a big collaboration, and I just kind of want to bring as many new people into this hobby as possible?
I don't understand my brain entirely, but I think my thinking process was this. I just released Balduran's Guide, and it was much more successful than I thought it was going to be. And I thought it was time for me to try to give something back to the community. And there is an RPG workshop, but at the time, and I think they're expanding, but at the time it seemed like it was more for adventure writing, and I was like, I want to kind of do that, bring a bunch of new people on board, get some fresh blood into the guild. But I don't do adventure writing. I think I wrote one and I didn't like the experience, and so I was like, but I don't. And I'm sure there are plenty more like me who are like, I want to do things for the guild, but I don't want to write an adventure. Yeah. So I thought, and at the same time, I was trying to introduce D&D to my kids, who at the time were 6 and 3 years old, and that does not form a party. They're not. I mean, you need like 4 or 5 people, or else they're just going to get massacred at the first instance of goblins or something. So, and the sidekick rules had just come out. I was like, these are cool, but I don't know if they want another walking, talking humanoid that has to have a personality. why don't we make something that would be interesting for kids? So I came up with the idea of animal sidekicks, and I was like, first to sixth level sidekick is not difficult to make. It's a short, if you just make one, it's a really short project. And then I sort of like these two thoughts combined, I was like, maybe I'll get a whole bunch of new people to make animal sidekicks. And so that's how it came about. But in terms of, it wasn't really difficult, except I didn't know how to budget for 43 people.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, everyone's going to get 1% of the royalties. And then I just felt guilty. I just felt guilty the whole time. They're like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, you deserve so much more, but you're getting 13 cents a sale.
I think, well, in fairness, like, yeah, for a project with that many authors, it's kind of hard to, I don't know how, yeah, I wouldn't know how, like, cutting it into like 40% would be easy, but 43, it gets into that thing of like, maybe like fractioning percentages and
we didn't, no one got less than 1%, but there were some very small royalty shares in that project.
So I guess I'm curious then. So like, was it the case of like you let people kind of pitch their own animals, or did you kind of have like a list of animals like from the get-go, or?
I had, I kind of went through basic rules in Monster Manual, and I was like, here's all the animals, and sort of a few were technically monstrosities or dragons, but that we could do. But it was like something like 100 or more, and then people chose from that list, and it was almost first come you're in kind of thing. Like if they responded, I was like, have you ever made something for the guild before? Have a medal on it? No. Okay, you're in.
Yeah.
So that's how it went.
So I guess I'm curious because like, so was it Animal Sidekicks came out a little while ago now? So I've seen like a few months at least. Like,
it's been almost a year.
Wow. Okay. Geez. And have you seen it? Like, has there been like have you had the chance to see any of the sort of creators come on there and go on to do other stuff?
That's the most rewarding part about it. I've seen so Marco M. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. It's Italian. He has gone on to do some successful things, and he's been great. Orla had a huge bestseller adventure set in Eberron, Murder on the Eberron Express.
Yep.
Brittany Hay was on that project, and she's gone on to do, they've gone on to do amazing things. And I can't, and I know there are others. Noah Simpson is collaborating with me on a big project coming to Kickstarter. So that's one of the best things, is like seeing these people who were just getting started, who are now like in their own right doing amazing things.
Yeah.
It's really rewarding to see that.
And then I guess is it the like is it sort of like the communication channels, like the Discord channel, is that like still somewhat active, or is like still kicking, or?
I think it's fairly died down now. I think some of them have gone on and they're like, we want to do more, so they're making Animal Sidekicks Volume 2. I'm not on that project because I'm like, I've seen a lot of sidekicks now.
Yeah. I think I remember vaguely speaking to Brittany about it. So I think they're sort of
is the one spearheading that effort. So
no, awesome. I get it. Yeah, no, I get it. The concept of giving back to the community and being able to do it on that scale as a first step is bold, and I'm glad it sort of paid off.
Yeah.
Is there any? I take it, is that do you have any plans for like something similar in the future, or is that kind of like
of future collaboration?
Well, I guess like future, like sort of like I was about to call it like I don't know what you call like a mass in like not a mass exodus. What's the opposite of an exodus? Of like an intake of new
Inodus.
Yeah.
I don't have anything on the horizon right now. I'm open to the idea, and I want to do it again, but I have so many different ideas that don't require a team that big first that I want to tackle. But sure, down the road, maybe a year from now, I'll probably be like, hey, let's get 40 more new people on the guild and and see. I do have a list that I sometimes draw from. I put out a survey and said, if you're new or haven't yet started and you want in, put your name on this list, and then I've shared that with people who regularly are project leads. So
Yeah.
I think in small ways we're picking up new people and including them in projects. But I don't know if I'll do something quite as ambitious like that for a little while.
If it's like, it's probably maybe like one a year, sort of pace yourself, don't you? So
this year is lasting about a decade long, so
I've lost all sort of concept of what time is.
Right.
So I guess also, so moving away then, kind of looking at like your products as a whole, then you kind of mentioned, is it Slinker Sailor Soldier Spy?
Yeah.
So I get caught up in the first one. I was like, Slinker. I don't really know what a Slinker does. But sorry, I was going to say, but with that, and then obviously with Balduran's Guide, it seems like a lot of the products you kind of do are very sort of like, not DM focused, but essentially they're tools and systems to sort of, or like, again, just more things to sort of throw at the party at the table. Is that kind of like would that be like an accurate MO for like the sort of products you kind of?
That is, so the kernel of my creative process always comes out of, I want to see this at my table.
Mm-hmm.
And I go looking for it. And if it doesn't exist, I'm just going to make it. It doesn't matter how long it takes. I'm just going to make it, because if I want it at my table, there's a good chance that other people do too. And even if it bombs, there's something now I've wanted and now I can use.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's why. And I'm a DM by choice. That's my preferred play style. So I think you will find a lot of my products are used by DMs. I think that's accurate.
So, and then I guess that sort of inspires them. So what was like the impetus? What was the sort of kick that made you sort of create Balduran's Guide to Kingdom Building then?
So before I played 5th edition, I played Pathfinder for a few years, and they had a kingdom building system in that game.
Yeah.
And I loved the promise of it and some of the basics of it, but it never really scratched that itch for me. I was intrigued by the idea, but I hadn't really seen anything that was simple enough that I wanted to use at my table.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make something like that, but I wanted it to feel very, very 5th edition. I didn't want it to feel like it was tacked on or an appendix to the game, but something that felt organically born of 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I made the settlement building part of it feel like you're creating a character. It feels like a PC.
Yeah.
And when it attacks another settlement, that feels like a ranged weapon attack. Things like that, because I wanted it to feel like there are already all these great mechanics in the game. Why not just... It's almost a reskinning, but I don't want to say it that, because I think it cheapens it a little bit, because I'm doing more than reskinning.
Yeah.
But it kind of starts with the idea of, okay, treat a settlement like a PC, treat your kingdom like your party, treat mass combat like normal combat,
mm-hmm.
And then a lot of the other pieces just fell into place really, really easily. I don't know if that answered your original question.
No, it completely does. I mean, like, no, it does, because like, the question kind of started from like, where do you get the inspiration from, and you answered that by like, well, I wanted it at the table, but it makes a lot of sense, and I think again, I guess it varies table to table of how much sort of mechanical crunch a table wants.
Right.
But it's hard to argue that it's taking like a sort of like the way you play D&D, and then just say, okay, well, this is now representative of strongholds and kingdoms. There's not a real sort of like as steep learning curve of saying, okay, well, a kingdom has AC 50, and they only use like, I don't know, like 3d12s, and it's like it's not practical to try and no, it's a really really clever way. I can see why it was so a runaway success.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I got started with the DMsGuild in May 2017, and this kind of speaks to the idea that I just wanted to use things at my table, because that's the very first thing I put out was actually just a class guide that I had made for my partner, who was playing a druid at the time, and I had made this class guide to help her level up and get familiar with the class. And then I was like, oh, I found the DMsGuild because I found Drive-Thru RPG. One of my friends wanted a product from there for his birthday, so I bought it, and then it was a hop, skip, and a jump to DMsGuild. I was like, oh, I'll throw this up there. And that's sort of like, DMsGuild is addicting. You start, I got $4 that first month, and I was like, this is awesome. Yeah. I'm making money from my hobby instead of just dumping money into my hobby.
So I was going to say, I kind of have like a quick question about the sort of the visual guides, just to sort of latch onto that. It's like, how did you like, how like, what was your process in trying to summarize a class? Like, because now you went on, obviously you started from like with the druid, and then obviously you went on to sort of, but like, what, like in trying to create like a visual guide, like how do you try and summarize a whole class in like a?
I approached it as if it were as if each. So I love games of any kind, and I think I got the inspiration from a game called Flux, and Flux is a game where you put down each card you put down changes the rules, or a lot of them do. So the rules of the game are always changing as you're putting down rules cards, and then sometimes taking them away. And I approached the class guides in the same way, because as if you listen to Jeremy Crawford at all, sometimes he's on Dragon Talk or he's on Twitter all the time. He's like, D&D 5th edition is just a rules of exceptions. Here are the basic rules, and then each class is just a list of exceptions to those rules, or something additional to those rules. So I started to think of it in that way. Each time you level up and get a new ability, it's just, here's another rule, here's another rule, here's another rule. And so I approached the visual class guides in that way. Oh, you're a second level druid now? Here's a rule about, wild shaping. I think they get it at second level, but
yeah.
And then if once you're done, you have all these, you have this list of rules that's specific to your character in front of you, and I think that's kind of the way I approach that.
No, fair. That's so yeah. That again, that kind of makes a lot of sense. I think as well. Like it's hard that when you've been playing D&D for a while, to try and look at it again with like fresh eyes, in the sense of like, unless you are like sort of moving to like a new class or like a class you've never played before, it is hard to sort of like, well, okay, I had learned that, but I guess I would trying to find a way to sort of map out all those exceptions in like a clean way. That's what makes sense. And then, so you started with those on the DMsGuild, and then what was the sort of like product to product like stepping stones?
I don't remember all of them. I think the next one was called A Motley Crew, and I was running a play-by-post out of the Abyss campaign, and I saw all these. You start. This isn't too much of a spoiler, but you start in a prison, deep underground, in the Underdark, and there are all these fellow prisoners there with the party. And I was like, wouldn't it be interesting if, you could pick up one of these and play them? So I gave them all a class, and some of them were races that aren't normally playable races. So I statted those up, and that was the next one. And I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it's actually done pretty well. I think it's a gold bestseller now.
Wow.
I guess because I just keep thinking I can't be the only one with this idea or this desire to have this thing at the table. So I think that resonated with a few people.
I mean, I find it sometimes it's not too surprising that official D&D campaign books don't always come with pre-gen characters.
Right.
Just because it would be like relatively easy to do, and the idea of like you have these in canon characters that are just there that you can pick up, but I don't know. It seems like Motley Crue kind of hit that niche.
Right. Yeah. And then I don't know, just each time I make something, it's because I see a need, I want it at my table, and there we go.
Fair. And so I take it as well. So you like the is there any? I was about to ask, is there any product that stands out as your favorite? But then I realized how mean of a question that is in terms of like so. I was gonna say, is there? Allow me to rephrase that. Is there any product that received more attention than you absolutely thought? Like you thought that this going in, you kind of thought this is going to be very niche.
Yes. I made. I did the same thing with Lost Mine of Phandelver that I did with Out of the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
I just statted up the major NPCs as if they were PCs in Lost Mine of Phandelver, and called it Fellowship of Phandalin, and threw it up on the guild, and walked away and thought, that's not going to sell very well.
No.
It's a platinum. And I have no idea how that happened, but I guess it's just one of those things where people are like, oh, great, that's $2. I'll put it in my cart, and then it just keeps going.
And I'm curious with both, the Fellowship of Phandelver and the Motley Crue. Have you read any like reviews of like how people are using them, or sort of like people sort of say, oh yeah, no?
No, not really. I mean, like some of the reviews, I don't remember every review, so this could be wrong, but I think the reviews are sort of like, this is a great product, or it was really useful at my table, or whatever, or just a rating, a star rating.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how people are using them. Like, are they picking them up and using them as more fleshed out NPCs that the characters only meet and engage with, or are people playing as Sildar Hallwinter from Lost Mine of Phandelver?
Yeah.
Or is that or as a Quaggoth that thinks he's a prince?
I guess at the end of the day, once you sort of create a product and put it out there, I guess it really doesn't matter what players or people are doing with them, if they've picked it up and purchased it. So it's a case of like, do whatever. It's nice when those stories sort of fall back and you hear like how people are kind of engaged with your sort of content.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, so that kind of like to bring some structure to this podcast, I've kind of let ramble. I apologize. We kind of touched on like where you kind of get your like ideas from. You sort of like you find a need for your table. You see if it's been met by the DMs Guild. If not, you just fill that void. What are kind of like the first steps you take in turning those ideas into reality? Like,
so I'm pretty vocal about this. I have ADHD, the inattentive type, and there are a lot of disadvantages that come with ADHD, especially in a neurotypical world.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that my brain does really well is it sort of eats away at ideas all the time. I'll be, at the sink doing the dishes, and I'll be thinking about, my next project or a project in progress. I'll be laying in bed going to sleep at night, and I'll have this idea in my head, and then I'll wake up and I'm still thinking about that idea, running after kids, because I'm a part-time stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And part-time freelancer. So the ideas are never the problem. I'm always like sort of generating ideas. then it feels like a great relief to sort of like push them onto the page. Finally, it's not just in my head. I can actually put words to paper, virtual paper, I mean, and start to do that. And so that's sort of where, that's sort of how it works. And then I'll invariably get stuck. And I'll either, spend some time thinking about it while I'm doing more dishes, or I'll start on another project. I have this habit of having sort of 2 or 3 projects running concurrently, which is actually happening right now. Yesterday I worked on 3 different projects in the same 4-hour workday. So,
was it the case of like, just sort of like hitting sort of like points to sort of jump between the two, or was it a case of like, I'm done with this one now, let's try this one? Or
it's kind of like finishing a miniature task, like step 10 of this project, and going, oh, I don't want to do step 11.
Yeah,
I'm going to switch to this one. Or figuring out which one has a need. I hate letting people down, so if there's ever a point where I feel like I've neglected a project that I'm collaborating on too long, I have to jump to that one.
Yeah.
Just to prove to them that I'm worth investing some time and energy in being part of that team. So it's kind of, this is very typical ADHD. I skip from project to project and go back and forth whenever I feel stuck. I'm like, well, that's okay.
It's interesting. It kind of makes a lot of sense. The idea of like the ideas and processes, like spending a lot of time like gestating and just sort of like being things. So is it kind of the case of like when it does come to writing, it's just essentially like releasing like a pressure valve of just letting all that sort of like all those thoughts that have been refined as like a
it really does. And then I can sort of tinker and refine it, because until it's on the page, I can't, like, there's only so much that my brain can contain at once.
Oh, yeah.
You can only like start with a kernel and start to flesh out little bits of it. So it does feel like a great relief to put it on the page and then start to mold it into something presentable.
No, interesting. And I don't know. I never know, like, to people listening, how interesting the sort of like the chats are about individuals' like work process. But it's a case of like I like finding out how other people work. It's like I guess it almost feels like I'm almost the opposite in that I'm very regimented. Like I have subheadings upon subheadings upon subheadings that then I just sort of like go in and sort of like plug in like Lego blocks. And I guess sometimes it is a case of like, because I don't necessarily always have as much time like thinking about something, it's sometimes my writing is quite ad hoc, and it's like, okay, well, I have this section, let's just fill it now, and my thinking and like sort of thing. So no, it's fascinating. I like it. I just
that's one of the things I love about your program too, is like hearing different people's creative processes. Yeah.
No, interesting. And then, so to keep it on your sort of like creative process as a whole, then, is there any particular part of a project that is your favorite?
I thought about this in preparation for this interview, and I really, no, not really. I used to think that that I didn't like layout and like the final steps, like typing up the product description that would appear on the web page. But I think that's just because those go last. Those are the last steps in the process, and my mind's always already leaping forward to the next project that I want to work on.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's layout and the product description in and of themselves. They just have the unfortunate thing of last in the process.
I don't know. Maybe like for one of the projects, just start with the page description, which you have to go back and change it undoubtedly, because the product I think there's rare that you write a product description that then the end product is exactly 1-to-1 the same. I think.
Yeah.
No, I think that's almost like an interesting exercise to like write down a project description at the start and end of project and see how much like
and then throw the whole thing away because it's different.
But I guess you could sort of see of like, oh yeah, no, I really thought writing that would be manageable, or oh yeah, no, I really let myself, saying, oh, this will be a 3-part adventure. I have written 5, so I was.
that hits a nerve because one of the things I'm working on right now, I thought it was just going to be 40 pages, and it's already double that length, and
Wow.
we're still writing. So
As I say,
yeah,
is that something you can kind of chat about a little bit? Or like, what's the
yeah.
project?
It's already you can already find information about it on my Twitter account. It's called "An Elf and an Orc Had a Little Baby,"
Ah, yes.
and it's beautifully illustrated by an artist. The cover is illustrated by an artist called the Torney, and it just has this sweet elvish man and this lovely orcish woman staring down at their baby, and it's so wholesome and
Okay.
warm, and I love it. But the idea of it is so the subtitles is parentage and upbringing,
Hmm.
and I wanted to just take chapter 2 of the player's handbook and tear it out and replace it with this.
Yeah.
So instead of picking a race, you pick 2 birth parents.
Hmm.
They can be any 2. If you want to be a warforged, if you want to have a warforged birth parent and an orc birth parent, that's fine. The rules allow for that. Maybe your
Yeah.
DM won't love that, but the rules allow for that.
I think it's the case of like, if there's enough love, they'll make it happen. If there's
Yeah, if there's enough love in your hearts, that's how it works, I think.
yeah.
So, um, and then and that's where you get all your biological, physiological traits.
Hmm.
And then we took all the cultural traits because there's no reason why a dwarf that was raised by elves would know how to wield traditionally dwarvish weapons,
Hmm.
stuff like that.
Or just immediately be
They
an
would
expert in
help
stone
us,
cutting and yeah.
right? And they would wield what elves wield if that's their culture.
Hmm.
So anyway, we've stripped all culture out of the equation and put that into a separate thing that you choose. So your third choice after your 2 birth parents is your upbringing,
Hmm.
and that's who raised you or what kind of culture you came up in. Um, and so, and between this melange, you find who your character is, and then you go through the steps of picking your profession, which is your background, what you did before you were an adventurer, and then
Hmm.
your class goes on top of that as normal. So, and it's been really fun. I'm
Hmm.
working with DJ Harris, who I've never worked with before, but he's been great. And Ashton Duncan is editing the whole project, and she's amazing. And like she's one of those. She's like a triple or quadruple threat. She can do anything.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, it's been really fun, and we're getting close. We're getting close to the end.
Nice.
So hopefully before the end of the summer, it'll be out.
Definitely, I definitely see with a product of that scale when again the fact that you kind of opened it with saying taking the chapter 2 of D&D and then just sort of like tearing it out. I can see why
Yeah.
that might grow in size in terms of like project scope.
Right. Yeah. VJ was always like, let's just do all of the races, all of the races. And I was like, what about Eberron and Theros and Ravnica? He's like, yeah, let's just do all of them. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's do all of them.
I
So we're
guess
doing all.
his thing is like if I'm sure like a good number of comments on a bunch of products on DM's Guild is like, hey, have you ever thought about doing this for X or Y? And it's like if it's like all encompassing, it's just like thud. There's everything. There's you don't need to look anywhere else. It's everything's here.
Right.
You want a Warforged, you want like a something from Theros. It's
Yeah. Hmm.
no. No, also no, excited for it. I do love the name, so I'm looking forward to sort of seeing it sort of come out because I think I've seen the art floating about as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Nice. And then so sorry, forgive me for going on that tangent to sort of bring it to steer it back around onto the your creative process. Then you mentioned that like it isn't necessarily the filling out the project page or finishing the stuff that is your least favorite part. It's just unfortunate of being the last. Do
Uh-huh.
you have a part that you don't like? Oh,
Um, that part I don't like.
or just I suppose
So
enjoy less than less than anything else.
I think so. I didn't know this going into it, but my first real collaboration was one I was leading,
Mhm.
which was Animal Sidekicks, and I don't like budgeting. I don't think I'm very good at it. I think it shows sometimes because Animal Sidekicks, we had this art budget for the cover. I was like, well, that'll be fine. But then I had all this guilt because we said no one's going to make any money until all of us do. And it was like, a week passed and no one had made any money. And I was like overwhelmed with guilt. Um, so I think I've decided that I like smaller collaborations just for that reason, because everyone can get a bigger piece of the pie. And anytime you put more than one human in a room, maybe even just one human, but there's going to be a little bit of tension or drama. And I like want to rush in and diffuse any tension. But I think I'm slowly learning that, like, we're all adults. We can sort ourselves out most of the time, and just because I'm the project lead doesn't mean I always have to be the one to sort of, smooth things over. So, but those are things I'm learning, because I've never really been. I mean, I was a teacher before I was a freelancer. I'm learning, but I think on the whole, I kind of like every part of a process. There are just parts that I'm not good at yet because I'm inexperienced, and I'm getting there. I'm trying to learn better and better how to navigate the newer things that I'm just trying out.
No, 100%. And I think I'm eventually, as you sort of, if you do it for long enough, you eventually get enough experience with everything that you kind of start feeling a little bit more confident. Or competent, I would probably say, is probably like the better word. That you kind of you kind of enjoy everything kind of has its own thing. And I 100%, I kind of agree with, like, when it comes to like leading collaborations, I think never being able to sort of predict how successful a product is. Like, there's no pre-orders. You can't be like, oh yeah, no, this many people have said they're going to get it. You just kind of have to throw it to the wind and just hope that it's hard to sort of, I don't know how like, I don't think I've been able to sort of rationalize or like handle that like guilt, if that's the best way to put it. This is turning into like a therapy session.
We're here for each other.
Yeah.
No, I know. So if you're referencing Big Boss Epic Goblins, I was so confident that was going to be gold. I was like, the illustration is phenomenal. Yeah. The creativity that we poured into this, the team was amazing. We all got along so well.
Yep.
Everything felt smooth, and then it sort of hit the guild, and I'm like, where are the sales? Maybe Goblin is too niche of a thing, or maybe people don't understand what they're getting from it. But I think that I love that book.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite collabs that I've ever worked on, and you just never know what's gonna.
I think it's it's a case of like not knowing, and I don't know, maybe it's a case of like people like goblins, but people like goblins being weak and small. Like they don't really want to deal with them on like but it was, for me, that project in particular, to like this is turning into like a post-mortem of but it was kind of like my first collaboration, and I was still sort of relatively new. But at the end of the day, is like, I think regardless of how well it sells, products on the DMsGuild do have long tails, so it will continue to sell and stuff like that.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily change of like how proud I am of that product. And I think an important thing is like that was a good product to learn the fact that I shouldn't tie the value I have of the product with how well it's selling. It's so sometimes you just have to sort of say, it's like, it would be nice for every knock it out of the park, gold by day 3 and stuff like that. But those things come with time, and if I'm still creating on the DMsGuild in let's say a year, let's not be too optimistic, then who knows, it may be it may be Electrum, it may be
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I was gonna say as well, so I guess one of the questions I've had a few people on, so like Jimmy in particular, and as well as Justice, who mentioned having large success with their first titles. not necessarily. So it's not necessarily the case with you, but when you sort of had the success that Alderans and well, actually, I guess talking about like a few of your products has had, is there still sort of a pressure on the sort of products that you have that sort of follow it, or?
Well, unlike Justice and a few others, my first one was not anywhere near a big success. In fact, I didn't have what I would consider a successful product in terms of sales until I was 2 years in. I think Slinker, Sailor, Soldier, Spy was the first one I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to actually see sales commensurate with your effort. And so, but yeah, when Baldurans hit the guild and stayed in the #1 spot for like a couple of weeks, at first I felt invincible. I'm like, yes, now all power is mine. but a dose of reality happens when you release your next product, where you're like, oh, okay. So there's still the process, and there's still going to be hits and flops, and that's still part of, that's still part of. I don't think you ever. Maybe there are a few people that are sort of like, if you're Matthew Mercer and you release something on the guild, you're like, yeah, it's gonna be platinum in no time, 2 days.
Yeah, I think the industry equivalent we have is probably Oliver, who was 3 back-to-back top 10s.
Yeah. Some people can churn out the hits like I can't believe, but I'm not one of those people, and maybe it's because my audience is confused. They're like, well, you made this thing that I really liked, and this next thing is very, very different.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all interested in this. And then the people who like this next thing won't like my one after that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I'm probably not helping myself, but I'm just gonna keep making what I want.
Yeah. I think it's a healthy way to work, and obviously, again, the #1 thing is maintaining your motivation and interest in keeping it going.
Yeah, burnout is real, and it can strike. I mean, it can hit anyone, no matter what you're doing. But I think it's far worse, or far more likely, if you're doing your next one not because you're interested in it, but because you think it'll sell well.
Yeah.
Which is why I really like my collections of NPCs, but I have to space them out because I don't want to make NPCs forever.
Oh, yeah.
They sell pretty well, but I can't churn out the 3rd volume.
I think that's what I was like, in the same way of writing, I found that with certain products that like NPC books or encounter books or item books, it's the fact that you're throwing you're not just doing 1 or 2, you're doing 50. And doing 50 of one thing back to back, regardless of how much you enjoy the process, it's the case of a steak is really nice. 50 steaks does not, even if they're the same quality, they're not equally the same.
Right. Which is kind of how I feel about sidekicks right now. I'm like, I'm good. I've done, I wrote a few sidekicks for Animal Sidekicks, and then
did some for Goblins as well.
Over 100 at this point between Animal Sidekicks and the Adventure Sidekick series.
Yeah,
I'm done with sidekicks for a while.
I think the one thing that I'm kind of things about is I wish it seems like they the sidekicks came out with the the Essentials kit. It was the sort of the second. Right. I feel like Wizards are definitely they're missing a thing by not having some tie-ins with some of their adventures. But then again, I suppose that allows you to fill a niche. So if they started doing them,
Animal Sidekicks team, let's talk. We have an opportunity here, but yeah.
No, interesting. And then in fairness, I feel like we've kind of been talking, reflecting on lessons as a whole. But are there any particular lessons that you wish you'd learned earlier?
This is redundant because many people before me have said so, but hire an editor.
Yeah.
I am an editor by trade, and I still didn't hire an editor at the beginning because I was dumb and
Hubris.
I didn't realize that this was my work on the DMs Guild was more than just a side hobby to my hobby. I didn't treat it like the real satisfying work it could be until much later. Luckily, I wised up and got Ryan Langer to edit Baldur's Guide to Kingdom Building, and his edits improved it immeasurably. And then I was like, I am never not using an editor again.
And I think I get.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to just add on to the editing that there is like. I was about to say there's so many different flavors of editors, but I don't know if that's the right phrasing.
Sure.
But it's like it's like almost like what editors bring to the table is like it varies, but the only thing that is kind of consistent is the fact that like it improves the quality of the product. Like regardless of who you go with, it's improving the quality. And there's there's people who can really sort of oomph up some really nice prose sections, and other people who can like take a mechanic that you've written and tear it to pieces in the nicest of ways, so that it can be better.
Right.
Yeah. And then sorry, you were going to say your second point.
Oh, my other one might just be for me, but I'm finding that you should probably, if you're just starting to be a project lead, you're interested in that, maybe keep your collaboration small for a little while.
Yeah.
I learned that, I mean, I am so grateful for the experience of Animal Sidekicks. I think it went really well, but I also think I got extremely lucky by getting the people I did, because it was a little bit at random. It was very at random. It was completely random.
The most random.
But I think you learn a lot about budgeting and about managing a group and about deadlines, and everyone's looking to you for direction. And it's just so much less pressure to start with something smaller and then maybe work your way up to something much larger. And Animal Sidekicks was a huge success in the fact that everyone was like, this is great, we're pulling together, we're really working it. Almost no one missed their deadline, but there were unexpected hiccups on my part that I think I largely made invisible to the team that I think I could have done better on if I had had a little bit more experience.
So, I mean, do you mind pulling behind the curtain? Like, what was one or two of the like hiccups?
Oh, I've sort of alluded to it before. It's just the budgeting stuff. I was sort of like figuring out the budgeting as we went. You know, as the submissions were coming in, as I was writing the project description page, as I was doing layout, I was like, "Ooh, how are we gonna pay for that cover?" Oh well, I'll think about it later. Like, have a plan. Yeah. Like, if you're going to do a big collab, have a plan and present it to everyone up front. And I think at one point I had everyone do a doodle poll. I was like, should we fund the cover this way or that way? And they're just like, that was really unprofessional of me. So but I've learned from the experience, and hopefully I can do better in the future.
No, I mean, again, you only really learn by doing, or like, that's one of the best ways to learn. So, and doubly so, you learn more by the mistakes you make than so it's all part of the process. And I'm seeing a lot of sort of like adventure collections together, and the more I see, the more that they sort of pop up and like with set themes and stuff. I'm thinking like I could give one of the, like I could maybe lead one of those. Give that a go. But that I think for me that's a dream, not a dream. Yeah, no, I think it is like a dream project to get like a bunch of cool people to write an adventure thing. But enough about me. What about you, Adam? What's like a dream project of yours?
So true to form, my dream project is always the next one I'm going to work on.
Nice.
And I think it's finally time for me to sit down and make. I've had this idea for a Kickstarter this isn't related to the Dungeon Masters Guild, so forgive me if I'm going out of
No,
bounds
no.
here, but
As long as it's in the tabletop RPG space, I'm
it is.
good. Like,
I'm going to try my hand at making my own tabletop RPG, but designed for kids.
nice.
And I'm going to call it Luncheons and Dragonflies.
Nice.
And you get to be cute woodland creatures, anthropomorphized, and go on picnics and play games and fight, neighborhood cats, which are as terrifying to tiny woodland creatures as a dragon would be.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to come up with some original mechanics and original ways of approaching tabletop RPG. I don't have a ton of experience with the length and breadth of tabletop RPGs. There's so many, but I haven't quite seen anyone. I have this one core mechanic in mind I haven't seen done anywhere else. So I'm going to try. I mean, it's probably done somewhere.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen it, so I'm going to try and do that. So look for that whenever I get around to it, I guess.
And was it? So I imagine the speaking of Kickstarters, then, because was it you kind of touched? We spoke. I think you mentioned it in passing, but you've got one pretty much more immediate on the horizon at the moment.
Yes. So this is the first Kickstarter I've ever done, and it's part of a pretty big collaboration. We have if you count, we have a cartographer, some artists, a layout designer, and then Cam Day, or Cameron Day, and I are both project leads.
Nice.
And then we have a team of 10 writers.
And
we're making a medieval 5th edition campaign setting that we're going to publish on DriveThruRPG and fund on Kickstarter. It's called Supers and Sorcery, and it's all about if you love peanut butter and chocolate together, superhero themes, and D&D. We're going to try to combine them, and I think we've done a great job. I haven't read everything that everyone's written because the deadline for the first draft was yesterday. Yeah. So we had a bunch of stuff just pour in, but the art is gorgeous. The writing I've seen feels inspired. If you like superhero comic books or movies, and you love D&D 5th edition, you're gonna love this because I think it's the most seamless combination of those two things that we can make. And I just We're doing a bit of time travel, I guess, because this is coming to you from the past. But but I just started tweeting about it today. So exciting.
Exciting.
The Kickstarter comes out in August of 2020. I don't know when this interview will hit your YouTube channel, but
here's the, I don't know either. Who knows? So no, I kind of have first of all is I remember actually watching the Discord have the chat about this project and how it sort of stemmed from almost nothing, and then next thing you know, there's everyone's going off into the other sort of. So seeing a Kickstarter form in real time is one of the most interesting experiences I've had on the Discord.
Right. That's funny. I watched the interview you did with Drew and how he just squeaked right in. I was like, Drew has been such a boon to this. He's come at this with almost as much enthusiasm as Cam, and that is hard to beat. Cam is an enthusiasm machine. But the whole team's been amazing. And we just hired Anna Gregerson to be our layout designer. So
that's good. That's gonna look good.
Next level. So we're really excited.
And then I guess I have a smaller side question. You mentioned how both you and Cam are co-project leads. How are you finding navigating that as we clearly carved out our respective niches, but responsibilities.
He's the creative project lead, and I'm the technical project lead. So I'm I'm the one in charge of deadlines, and I'm the one managing the Kickstarter.
Hmm.
And he was the one that was kind of managing the writing team, giving
Yeah.
that creative direction the whole time. And I think it's worked really well. There are a lot of moments where like we rush into each other's direct messaging and saying, what do we do about this, or what do we do about that?
Yeah.
But it's been really collaborative, um, and and just Cam has endless enthusiasm, and I have endless anxiety. So between the two of us, we balance each other out.
Yeah.
I'm like, how's this gonna work? She's like, it's gonna work. I'm like, does this seem balanced? She's like, overbalanced is awesome.
Yeah, it's just like, isn't that's something of Cam's MO. It's like I just want people to have fun.
Yeah, but we have we have a great team of writers, and I'm just looking forward to it. Sadie, Laurie, and I are gonna edit the whole thing, um, yeah, I'm super excited for that. So that'll be coming out, the next month. Well, I should say August.
Yeah, August. Like I said, so I think tentatively I'm gonna. Here's the thing, whether it is make or break. I think this will come out on the 30th of July.
Oh, is that your prediction?
My prediction, yeah. We'll see
Okay.
how right or wrong I am. It's now the 30th of August.
We actually have a first draft now. So yeah, I think we could launch. We just need a video.
Yeah.
I heard those help, and we have someone.
No, I like that. It's especially with was it Kickstarter being like a month long. Going into it with obviously a draft complete and stuff like that, or like a version done. I'm pretty again because was it behind the Cities of Mist Camelot that I was involved in. That was kind of had how we had or how Ryan sort of planned it all to. Was sorry?
Were you involved in that?
Yeah. I was an adventure writer, so I wrote like an adventure and then like a bunch of my hands kind of all over that.
I feel like that was a great Kickstarter.
Yeah. So again, I can't take any credit for the Kickstarter. That again, that's all Ryan and Rose and all their sort of the research they put in. I just get to point to the page and go, I was there for that. Sometimes I helped. Whereas they get all the stress and the actual kudos for putting it all together. But no, actually, what's great is it leads nicely into like my next question, because you've spoken about so many amazing people that you've had the chance to work with. Are there any people in the sort of the DMs Guild space that like particularly inspires you, or?
Almost everyone.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think my first editor was Ryan Langer, and he was amazing and continues to do great work. He's spearheading his own sort of. It almost feels like it is. It's like his campaign setting franchise.
Yeah.
Which is inspiring. I think Laura Hirschbrunner is awesome. Mm-hmm. She speaks truth with passion and fairness, and also does amazing work. Eleanor Jordan, who is a great editor, and her and Lydia and Ciara, and I'm forgetting Kayla, made the Adventures Domestic Handbook, and that's a phenomenal project. I'm collaborating with VJ Harris right now. He's amazing. Just steady, reliable, wise about how we proceed through a collaboration. Mm-hmm. Newcomer is Eugene Marshall, but he's done amazing. I don't know, he just seems to have a mind for how business works, mm-hmm. or I don't know, it's just already done amazing things. Kathleen Harrington, I worked with she was the editor for Brawler, Bandit, Brigand, Bard.
Ooh.
And she did an amazing job. Kai Linder was great. Ryan Langer, Sadie, and Kai and I worked on Realigned. Ashton Duncan was she's editing and she's, I think I talked about her earlier in the program, but she's always inspiring me. Rosa Lyceum is I'm always amazed by people who can like both churn out amazing content but also illustrate it, and do both. And then of course I have mad respect for Ashley Warren, because I love people who are constantly bringing new people into this industry, and I think she's done the most of that out of anybody I can think of. So
was it the RPG?
All of those people, and then probably dozens more that I can't think of right now.
Well, you did, I should say, to give you some defense, you did start off by saying everybody. So that's you've got everyone ticked. It's just, whether they got the special second mention. But no, again, we've got a good old community. I think I say that a lot. It's, the creators in the space it's a good space.
Yeah. Oh, I'm already thinking about more people. I
was gonna say, so I know for a fact, I think I'm gonna have to do like a special like Christmas episode where I think I pull together like everyone who said thanks, and I just put all those thanks back to back, or I just like read names for an hour.
Yeah. Special thanks.
Yeah. So here's the thing: I could read names for an hour, and I'd probably still miss people. So it's
probably.
But no, I and also was so looking at the time. I think we're coming up to like the end of the hour. But I like I said, so you've touched on the Kickstarter. You kind of mentioned the your Orc Baby project. Is there anything else that you're currently working on that you kind of want to give like a shout out to?
Not that I can talk about. So.
Oh, nice. No. In fact, it's like, again, the fact that you're working on like 3 things at a time, and you have Kickstarter on the go. You have like, I think it sounds like you're busy. You're keeping busy.
Yeah, it's this is kind of I feel like I am living a life that my 13-year-old self would be jumping up and down with joy hearing about. Like, when I'm that old, I will be doing this.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's just got it's weird to think. I try not to think about that too much.
I mean, really, I think a lot of it comes from privilege, because I know that if my partner wasn't working and didn't have health insurance that provides for our entire family, or if I had been born under different circumstances, or if I hadn't been able to go to college and get, an education so I can understand how to put together a sentence really well, and like all these things comes from a place of privilege. And I think part of the impetus for me trying to bring other people into this industry is I want to help out where I can. Because I know that not everything I've done is because I necessarily deserve it, or that I'm here because I'm gifted in ways other people aren't. I think I've had time, and I've had space to think, and I think those come about because of luck, circumstances beyond your control sometimes.
Yeah. And in fact, it always stands out to when people actively go out their way to give back to the community, I would take my metaphorical hat off to you and stuff like that, because it's amazing. You're doing some really good work, and again, it's the community can only benefit from a more diverse range of voices, or people who otherwise wouldn't have stepped in the hobby unless the sort of the door was open for them. So look at that, like getting all sort of like sort of wholesome little ending we got. But it feels bad to segue from that sort of message into sort of self-promotion. But if anyone's interested in hearing about your work or anything, Adam, what's kind of the best way that they can sort of stay in contact?
I'm on Twitter at AdamMakesTTRPG, and one of the things I'd like to do on Twitter is boost other people. So if there's anything you're making that is cool and is related to tabletop RPG, let me know. If I see it, I will automatically retweet it. If I don't see it, just bring it to my attention, and I will be sure to send it to my followers.
Yeah, well, as I say, was it speaking to like people about advertising stuff? Just tweet again. If like I said, was it tweeting? Yeah. You need to tweet more about your products. It's like just don't hold back. So was it eventually, by the law of averages, Adam, you'll find one and retweet it. But yeah, other than that, again, thank you so much for taking the time, Adam. This has been a blast. I'm glad we managed to find a time to have this chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for allowing me to be on the program.
No, like I said, I think I mentioned this before when I was speaking to Jess. I love it when people approach and ask. But I mean, like, if you're listening to this and be like, hey, I can chat for an hour, just come message me. Any and everybody's welcome. If you are curious about contacting me, you can find me on Twitter at Whitby Writes. I'm there too often, so chances are I will respond. I guess my closing question, as always, is Adam, how do you end a podcast?
I've always wanted to try this. Just kind of look mildly offended and then slowly slide out of the screen.
Oh, nice. Just